Welcome to the Mama Needs a Moment podcast with your hosts, Chrissy and Cindy, co-founders of Her Plus Health Collective, and moms who understand the chaos of juggling it all. But here's the thing, your well-being matters. That's why we're on a mission to change the way moms take care of themselves. This season, every episode features a roundtable conversation, bringing together trusted experts from different backgrounds to talk about the topics that matter most to moms, creating space for more collaborative whole person care. These episodes are short, meaningful, and easy to fit into real life. You'll hear from our Her Plus expert providers sharing expert insight and real life tips you can use right away. Learn more about them in our free provider directory linked in the show notes. So take a deep breath, grab your coffee, and let's make these moments count. Welcome to Mama Needs a Moment. We are here with just a few of our Her Plus expert providers. They have come to join us for this important roundtable conversation on maternal grief and loss, supporting moms through difficult and hard seasons. In the next several episodes, we're opening up space for the many forms of loss mothers experience, including but not limited to miscarriage, infertility, identity shifts, or the loss of relationships, health, or loved ones, the loss of loved ones. These are conversations that don't always get the space or acknowledgement that they deserve, often because they're uncomfortable, misunderstood, or don't fit into the more traditional or visible definitions of grief. And because of that, many mothers find themselves carrying these experiences quietly without the validation or support they truly need. Our goal is to bring these experiences into the open and to create a space where grief in all of its forms can be named, explored, and met with compassion. So before we begin, each of our experts will briefly introduce themselves and share their area of focus. And as a reminder, you can watch in video format over on our YouTube channel. You can access that link in our show notes. You can go to YouTube and search in the search bar for Her Health Collective. And you can also go to our website to get to YouTube. Kelly, would you pop on and say hi and give a little background?
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Kelly Smedley. I am a board-certified psychiatric clinical nurse specialist, and I'm also a certified perinatal mental health professional. I am the founder and CEO of Waypoint Counseling and Maternal Wellness. We are a practice that focuses on pregnant, postpartum, and beyond. We serve women and moms across North Carolina, and I am also a loss mom myself. I have experienced the loss of my son when he was 3 months old to SIDS, and that was almost 13 years ago. So I not only have professional experience, I have a personal story as well, and I'm excited to talk about this topic today.
Thank you so much, Kelly. We're so sorry for your loss. And thank you for using your experience as a way to help others.
I'm Catherine Rose. I am an integrative health practitioner. I work a lot with women and moms that are struggling with chronic or autoimmune conditions. And I'm also a single mom of 2 kids, 9 and 11. I'm just excited to be here. I too think this topic is not talked about enough. I'm glad that space is being created to talk about it and to make it almost more common to talk about and to make it okay. Make it okay for us to feel and just let other moms out there know that they're not alone.
I'm Sarah Shimanovsky, and I'm the owner of Fermata Counseling, which is a practice where I focus on moms and perinatal mental health, but I have a soft spot in my heart for grief work as well. And like Catherine was saying, like, let's talk about it, because a lot of times in our grief, we are isolated, and the less isolation, that there is, and the more these uncomfortable conversations are brought forward, the more we find our community and the more we find our safe spaces to talk about grief and realize that, oh, actually, we all walk our own grief journeys. And, you know, there's a lot that I can get from having these conversations with others.
We are going to shift now into grief and its timeline, because we all know that there's a certain timeline you're supposed to follow in all things, grief included, right? There's this often unspoken expectation that grief is going to follow a certain path, and that with enough time, we should be able to move forward or feel like ourselves again. I think it was Catherine in a previous episode who mentioned that grief can hit you like a tsunami wave when you're standing in the grocery store line. And what I think is important to note is that sometimes that tsunami wave comes years later out of nowhere, and you're like, where did that come from? But that's the ebb and flow of grief. We wake up one day and we feel like we're okay, and then a week later, a year later, that tsunami wave is coming for us again. So it's important to note that grief doesn't follow this progressive timeline of healing. It can come in waves, and it can show up right away, or it can resurface later. Sometimes around meaningful dates, anniversaries, other times it comes without warning. And when it does, it can feel really confusing, especially if the world expects you to be past it already. Didn't that happen years ago? Shouldn't you have moved on by now? I'm saying that in air quotes if you're listening. I wanted to make sure that was clear. So today we're talking about what grief actually looks like over time, and why letting go of the idea of a timeline can be an important part of healing. What does it actually look like when grief unfolds over time? And why is the idea of a timeline so harmful to those of us navigating grief?
In Psychology 101, we learn what is it? Kelly, is it Kubler-Ross? Is that the DABDA?
Kubler-Ross.
Kubler-Ross. No Kubler elves here. Excuse me, Dr. Kubler. It's kind of bogus anyway. The outline, I think it was developed in the 70s. Maybe I'm making things up on a podcast. Sorry, y'all. But it is an older school of thought: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And, I think it still is taught in Psych 101 because it's such a sentinel piece of research of let's try to explain the grief experience. And that leaves us thinking I must go through these 5 stages of grief and they must be linear. Where am I? Oh, I am anger. So, okay, so I just need to go through my bargaining and then I'll be one step closer to acceptance. And it's not like that. And the research has been kind of debunked of grief is not linear and it's not a universal experience and it's not going to be neat. It's going to be messy. And it's going to follow its own course. And we can't prescribe what we have to do next for ourselves because we don't know where we're going to be. So I wanted to bring in that school of thought and just say, sorry, Dr. Kubler, sorry, Dr. Ross, we're moving on from that school of thought.
Yes, Kubler-Ross. It's bringing me back to nursing school ages ago. But I think what can be helpful is, I always tell my clients, give yourself grace, right? There is no handbook for this. And the grief does ebb and flow. And there's guilt with that too. So there's guilt when the grief gets less intense. And then you're like, well, wait, am I getting over this? Does that mean I didn't love my child as much as I thought? Oh, wait, I'm experiencing some joy. Wait, but I should be crying and sad and miserable. So even when the grief gets better, you can't win because you beat yourself up about that. I wish I could have a visual, but yeah, grief, is not linear. It's just a big scribbly line and it's messy, like you said, Sarah. One thing that I've found helpful, I've been to several trainings with David Kessler, who's a grief expert. Go to grief.com. That's his thing. I'm like, man, he got in on that domain name. But He actually lost his son several years ago, and I went to a training before he lost his son and after, and even he realized like you don't know until you've gone through that experience losing a child. But one thing he stresses, and that I stress with my clients and friends, is finding meaning that can help the healing. And sometimes there is no meaning, right? In my case, a perfectly healthy 3-month-old baby died for no apparent reason. And some people can throw religion into it. I don't really, I have some faith, but like I also want my baby here. But to find your meaning in what helps get you through and focusing on what you can control can help you navigate your grief. So for me, part of it is my career, right? Like part of why I'm doing this podcast is to help other lost moms feel less alone. It could be, bringing awareness to a cause so you feel like your loss isn't in vain and that there's some sort of positive silver lining or outcome that is coming from such tremendous pain and grief. So I just wanted to throw that in there, and that is in the messiness of it too, finding that meaning. And sometimes it's not clear what that is for years, but looking for that and trying to form that for yourself can be really healing.
In regards to the timeline, I will see clients maybe, and this just recently happened, the week of a loss, and they're processing one way. And I will see them the next week. And already, you think about how fresh that is to have the loss happen so recently. But even that next week, they're in the perspective of, I should be moving on. I should be closing this up. And, when we expand that timeline, and I talk to someone who's, lost their mom 2 years ago, right? And is saying, why is this still, it's, we cannot put that, because in my theory of grief, the grief is permanent. It is a permanent new addition in what you are holding for the rest of your life, and how you hold it and its role and how much you feel and experience it on the daily changes. But the grief is always there. So the idea of healing is something I think every individual needs to sit with, of like, what does healing mean for you? Because in no circumstance I can think of, again, in my personal theory, is it erasure, because we're not going to erase grief. So figuring out, if I see myself in the future as healing, what does that mean? And for people that I work with, I say, we're not going to get rid of sadness. We're going to try to reduce the suffering from it. And that's the point of like therapy for grief, because obviously grief is a human experience and something we can't get rid of. So when you go to therapy for grief, coming in with the expectation of like, what do I want from this? Because I can't get rid of it,
A huge shout out to our Patreon subscribers. Your support truly means the world to us. Thanks to you, we are able to continue the weekly production of Mama Needs a Moment and getting this valuable information from these incredible guests out to you, our listeners. This final question has been recorded as a bonus and is available for our Patreon subscribers to go listen to right now. Be sure to log into your Patreon account and have a listen. If you're not a subscriber, we'd love to have you. The link is in the show notes.
Also, regarding the timeline, I saw something the other day that, and this might be from another grief expert, but I can't name and credit. But when somebody asks, when was the loss? When did you lose your child? Or when did you lose your parent? Or when did you lose your dog? Right? It's almost like they're in this like kind of assessment mode of like, what is the worth of your grief? What can I assess in the strength of your grief? And that can become a common question. And then for someone really going through it and like feeling the hidden meaning behind it of like, I'm judging you for your timeline, it can feel real icky. And what this person said to do is, very therapist-y, turn it back on them of like, I'm curious of why you're asking. Because either they're going to have to call it out on themselves and say, because you're crying and it was 13 months ago, and they're going to have to pull out their judgment in an embarrassing way, or they're going to have something meaningful behind it that you can then work with or relate to them on, because otherwise it might just feel like that judgment piece of like, I'm going to put a value on your grief because of the timeline.
That's such an important point, Sarah, that it feels like external pressure does make you feel like your grief has to be in a certain timeline. Or I lost my brother 30 years ago. I was 18. You guys can do the math. But I have been in therapy for years and years and years. And I thought that I had moved beyond it. There are still things that trigger me, that take me back into that time period. But what I most recently realized, and this is a very vulnerable thing to say, is my therapist said, I think you have post traumatic stress disorder. And this is 30 years after my brother's passing. And I was like, wait. How is it that goes with like veterans and people that have had just horrific things happen to them? She's like, well, the loss of someone is horrific. And just having it stated to me like that, but then the shame I feel with knowing that I'm still dealing with such emotion inside of me so long after this had happened. It just, I guess my point in saying it is just really validating that it's not on a timeline, that you're grieving forever for your whole life, and things will set it off or bring you back to that moment. And you might find that you haven't figured it out at all. I don't know. It depends.
Thank you for sharing that, Cindy, and sorry about the loss of your brother. But you're right. I mean, this is what we talked about earlier, is how it lives in the body, right? That trauma. And it's those little reminders can bring you right back. It create that panic, those panic attacks. It can lead to nightmares.
My favorite way to look at trauma specifically, but pulling it in to your story, comes from my old supervisor, Hillary, who you guys know. And that what trauma does is like, we have this picture, right? And like, let's say it's a mirror and we see ourselves in it, and trauma comes and shatters it. And like, yeah, there are going to be bigger pieces of that mirror. My 8-year-old, middle child broke a mirror. So like, I've just been through it actually, literally, kind of recently. So you got your bigger pieces that you pick up, and maybe we do those in the first, year of therapy of like, I'm going to get these big chunks of mirror and, set it aside and be safe with them and understand them because they're easy to see. But, for years and years, you're just walking along life, right? And ouch, in my foot is a shard that I missed. And those shards can be like the tiniest little tiny shards, right? But that's what trauma has shattered it, and it has gone everywhere. And those shards will keep showing up no matter how many chunks you have worked on and picked up. Like, there are going to be things that, and maybe it's a little thing that's just like, oh, ouch. Or maybe it's drawing blood, we don't know until we encounter them and be like, well, I missed a piece. And like, that surprised me. But then to be like, yeah, I'm 30 years later, but I'm still finding these shards. But that makes sense because it just shattered so completely.
And something else to remember too, I think that is important. Not everybody deserves access to your story and your situation, and that it's okay to be protective of yourself and your life and your story. And I know you can't help, other people that it trickles out to, but you can keep yourself, somewhat protected, especially during the tender stages.
Thank you so much, everyone. And Sarah, that analogy was amazing. Thank you so much. Come back for our next episode where you can get more information from our Her Plus expert providers in this current roundtable discussion on maternal grief and loss, supporting moms through hard seasons.
That's a wrap. You carved out a few moments just for yourself, and that's a big deal.
We understand that time is limited, but we've got your back, which is why we keep these episodes short, sweet, and packed with goodness.
Don't miss a thing. Hit the follow button so you're always the first to know when a new episode drops. If you had as much fun as we did, let us know by leaving a review.
And remember to let other moms know that we're here doing motherhood alongside you. Grateful to share a few moments taking care of you.